It was late when I found the box, tucked away in the attic behind a stack of my grandfather's old war trunks. Dust motes danced in the single beam of my flashlight, illuminating the faded cardboard and the barely legible inscription, "Property of Elias Thorne, do not discard." Elias Thorne was my great-uncle, a man shrouded in whispers and unspoken anxieties throughout my childhood. He disappeared in the summer of 1972, vanished without a trace from his isolated cabin in the Adirondacks. My grandmother, his sister, never spoke of him, and my father would only offer vague pronouncements about a troubled soul seeking peace. Curiosity, a morbid fascination perhaps, compelled me to open the box. Inside, I found a collection of seemingly mundane objects: a worn leather-bound journal, a tarnished silver pocket watch, a set of antique drafting tools, and a stack of photographs, yellowed and brittle with age. The journal was the first thing I picked up. The cover felt strangely cold to the touch. The first entry was dated June 1st, 1972. Elias wrote about his retreat to the cabin, a desperate attempt to escape the anxieties that had been plaguing him for months. He described vivid nightmares, feelings of being watched, and a growing sense of dread that he couldn't explain. Initially, I dismissed it as a case of writer's block, or perhaps a midlife crisis manifesting in paranoia. But as I continued reading, a creeping unease began to settle in. The entries became increasingly erratic, filled with fragmented thoughts and unsettling observations. He wrote about the woods surrounding the cabin, describing them as sentient and watching. He claimed to hear whispers on the wind, voices that called his name in the dead of night. One entry, dated June 15th, stood out. "The birds have stopped singing. It's as if they know something I don't." That struck me as odd. The Adirondacks were teeming with bird life. The silence alone would have been deafening. The next day's entry was even more disturbing. I saw her again, at the edge of the woods, tall and gaunt, with eyes like black pits. She doesn't speak, but I know she's calling me. I paused, a chill running down my spine. Who was she, and what did Elias mean by calling him? The subsequent entries became a descent into madness. Elias wrote of sleepless nights filled with terror and hallucinations. He barricaded the windows of the cabin, convinced that she was trying to get in. He stopped eating, stopped bathing, and his handwriting became increasingly shaky and illegible. The last entry, dated June 29th, was a single scrawled sentence: "I can't fight it anymore. She's here." The journal ended abruptly, leaving me with a sense of profound unease. I set it aside and picked up the photographs. Most were landscapes of the Adirondack woods, towering pines, crystal-clear lakes, and moss-covered rocks. But one photograph, taken near the cabin, caught my eye. It was a picture of a dense forest, the trees casting long, ominous shadows. At first glance, it seemed like any other landscape photo, but as I stared at it, I noticed something unsettling in the background. Half hidden behind a cluster of trees was a figure. It was tall and slender, with long, dark hair that obscured its face. It looked like a woman, but her proportions were strangely distorted, almost inhuman. A wave of nausea washed over me. I flipped the photograph over, hoping to find some clue, some explanation. On the back, in Elias's handwriting, was a single word: Lilith. I had heard that name before. Lilith, the mythological demon, the seducer of men, the bringer of madness and death. I dismissed it as a coincidence, a product of Elias's increasingly unstable mind. But the image in the photograph continued to haunt me. I decided to visit the cabin. It was located deep in the Adirondacks, miles from the nearest town. My father had told me that it had fallen into disrepair, abandoned and forgotten. After a long and arduous hike, I finally reached it. The cabin was exactly as my father had described it, dilapidated and overgrown with weeds. A sense of foreboding washed over me as I approached the front door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The cabin was dark and damp, the only light filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Everything was just as Elias had left it, his clothes hanging in the closet, his books stacked on the shelves, his drafting tools scattered on the desk. I walked over to the desk and picked up one of the drafting tools, a compass. It felt cold and strangely heavy in my hand. As I turned it over, I noticed something etched into the metal. It was a symbol, a series of interlocking circles and triangles. I didn't recognize it, but it filled me with a sense of unease. I spent the next few hours exploring the cabin, searching for any clues that might explain Elias's disappearance. I found nothing but more evidence of his descent into madness, rambling notes, strange drawings, and a growing collection of occult books. As the sun began to set, I decided to leave. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was lurking in the shadows. As I stepped out of the cabin, I noticed something on the porch. It was a small wooden doll. It was crudely made, with button eyes and a painted smile. It was dressed in a tattered white dress. I picked it up. It felt strangely cold, almost clammy. As I held it, I noticed something on the doll's chest. It was a symbol, the same symbol that I had seen etched into the compass. A wave of terror washed over me. I dropped the doll and stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned and ran, not stopping until I reached my car. I drove back to town as fast as I could, my mind racing with fear and confusion. I spent the next few days researching the symbol. After hours of searching, I finally found something. It was a symbol associated with Lilith, a symbol used in ancient rituals to summon her from the depths of hell. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Elias hadn't just gone mad, he had summoned something evil into the woods, and that something had claimed him. I haven't been back to the cabin since. I tried to forget about it, to dismiss it as a bad dream, but the image of the doll, the symbol, and the photograph of Lilith continue to haunt me. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is howling outside my window, I think I hear whispers on the wind, voices calling my name. It was just last week that I was looking at the picture again, the one of the woods. I noticed something I hadn't seen before, or perhaps I hadn't wanted to see it. Just to the left of where the figure, Lilith, stands in the background, almost imperceptible, is another figure, much smaller, almost childlike. It's staring directly at the camera. It's me.